Hello everybody, thanks for joining me. My name's Dave and you know where you are. I just thought I'd tell you a little story. After 5 years of having a winch on my car, I've finally used my winch in anger. Finally. It's only taken 5 years. Now excuse me, I've got my dinner down my shirt and everything, but anyway, it's one of those things. This 5 years, it was almost a disaster. However, I got away with it, and I'll explain it here now. What happened, my wife and I had a bit of an altercation. It happens now and again, and we all do it. And they never end well for either of us. So I decided this time I'd change things and go camping overnight to cool off a bit, because I was seething with anger when we were having the right Barney. So I'm home again now and things are back to normal, but I packed up my car and set off for O'Toole's campground because it isn't too far and there's not too many river crossings. It was 10:30 p.m. Yes, these things never happen in the morning, do they? And I got off onto O'Shea Road on-ramp for the Monash heading towards Warrigal. I was sitting at a red light and it was at this point I realised I'd forgot my recovery kit. So I debated whether to return or not. It was quiet, so I decided to do a U-turn and go back. And thank goodness I did, as you'll discover later in the story. I returned home, grabbed my recovery kit and a couple of other things and set off again. Now, I am reading from here, so do apologise. It was about 10:50 when I left again, and I got onto the Monash and stopped for a coffee on the way, and it was at this point I decided to head to the nearest campground because it was getting late, and I thought by the time I get to O'Toole it's going to be 2:30 in the morning, which turned out to be a moot point as it happened. But so the nearest campground turned out to be Forest Road Campground in Bunyip. So I plugged it into Google Maps and set off only to find a number of vehicles already there. So I then tried the Latrobe River camping area, and that was full too. So the next campground on the map was Starling's Gap, and I thought, we'll give it a try, see how we go, nothing to lose. So it's now 30 minutes into the next day, and I still had nowhere to camp. I was halfway there when I decided that Nuji was probably a better option. So I put that into Google and set off. The sat-nav took me along the track and then told me to turn off, which I did. The track rose fairly quickly and was very wet and slippery, and I thought to myself, you're going to get caught out here, David. Now, at this point, I will state that you should never, ever drive when you're tired, especially off-road. I engaged four-wheel drive and set off up the hill. I quickly lost momentum and slid to the right side and stopped. I tried to reverse, but soon revealed I was way off the track. I thought to myself, it's 1 a.m, you need to assess this before you reverse off the banking or the likes of something like that. So I tried to open the door and couldn't, I was against the banking. So I climbed over the seats, got out of the car and had a look with my light. Going backwards wasn't a good option. It was okay, and it'd been fine, but it wasn't a good option looking at the ground. So going forwards wasn't really possible either unless I used my winch. And thankfully I'd retrieved my recovery gear bag at this point, otherwise I'd have still been there waiting for assistance. Now, pulling out a winch onto a steep muddy slope with a bad knee isn't really that clever. And I struggled, but I had to do it because nobody was coming to help until at least the next day. I did have a phone signal and I considered calling my son Rob, but thinking how every time I wanted to go camping it would be followed by, shall I keep my phone with me, or words to that effect, just being sarcasm, I decided I would get myself out. Pulling out the winch rope and getting it onto the banking to put the tree trunk protector around the tree were the hardest tasks that faced me. However, I managed to get them done. I also needed the winch extension strap because the distance was about 30 to 35 meters, so the tree and the winch rope and the extension strap, the tree trunk protector and 2 soft shackles. And I was ready. I jumped into the car, climbed across the driver's seat, started winching in, and as the rope tensioned it stopped, and I realised I hadn't engaged the clutch. This is where you need an assistant, so I climbed over again. Bearing in mind I got muddy boots and there was mud everywhere, and I engaged the winch clutch. Using my winch in anger for the very first time, it pulled me out and back onto the track. But try as I might, I could not get the rear wheels into the same troughs as the front wheels. So securing the car again, I released the winch and moved the whole shebang over to the tree on the right. I secured everything, engaged the clutch and got back in the car, and now I had to decide if I was going to go forwards or backwards after I got the car straight. I winched the car straight, and at this point I decided to try go forwards. I knew I would have to lower my tyre pressures, and it was then that I realised what had all happened. Being tired, I had engaged four-wheel drive, but I hadn't engaged the front hub locks. So I was essentially in two-wheel drive and four-wheel drive at the same time. So without the hub locks, the front wheels just don't turn. So I was driving in four-wheel drive, turning the front drive shafts, but they stopped at the hub locks. I lowered the tyres down to 18 psi, packed up the recovery gear and engaged the front hubs. Then, from halfway up the woody slope, I drove straight up and continued my journey. After all that messing around, it was now 2:30 and I just drove home, arriving around 7:45 after calling at the jet wash and hosing down my car. I was keen to get the dash cam footage, but I learned a very important thing about dash cams and off-roading. Every little bump and corrugation locks the current file to being recorded, so my memory card was half full of locked files. This meant that the space left to record files was limited to the camera, and it had overwritten all the footage of on the trip home. So this video is a story and not a video of the event. The next time I will record it or at least lock the files. Takeaways from this experience are my winch works well, and as does my recovery gear. One tree was far too big for the tree trunk protector, so take two of them. And if you think soft shackles won't work, you're very wrong, they work to treat. And finally, if you've had knee surgery in the last 12 months, take a helper with you. Thanks for listening. Don't forget, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video. And I'm sorry there's no video for you to watch on this one. Thanks for watching. Bye. See you later.